People are not ready for this kind of truth. With all the turmoil that's happening in this world, with all the turmoil specifically in the division and the bipartisan division that's happening in America today, I feel like it's messages like these that really need to wake the people up. But I almost sadly have to say that I feel like it's almost too late for people to wake up. But I'm going to be looking into KGB defector Yuri Bezmenov's warning to America. It's funny that it's actually interviewed in 1984. As always, I'll get my thoughts on afterwards, but let's get straight into it.
Mr. Bezmenov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow. He was the son of a high-ranking Soviet Army officer. He was educated in the elite schools inside the Soviet Union and became an expert in Indian culture and Indian languages. He had an outstanding career with Novosti, which was and still is, I should say, the press arm or the press agency of the Soviet Union. It turns out that this is also a front for the KGB. He escaped to the West in 1970 after becoming totally disgusted with the Soviet system, and he did this at great risk to his life. He certainly is one of the world's outstanding experts on the subject of Soviet propaganda and disinformation and active measures. Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation. What matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized. This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades. It's the same pattern everywhere. The time bomb is ticking with every second.
And he said at the very end that the time bomb was ticking. I think it's already went off, as we can see. I think it's very interesting how, yes, we do know that a lot of the leftist ideology has its roots in Marxism, but I would even challenge you guys to take it a step deeper, because this isn't new. You have to understand that this isn't just the KGB, this is also the CIA. The worst part is that these are Americans doing it to other Americans. Now, he could be obviously talking about the average day Joe doing this to their fellow neighbor, because that's what we see today, because they've been brainwashed, so in turn they're taking what they've learned and what they've been brainwashed with, and they're putting it on other people and brainwashing them until the cycle keeps going and keeps going, and before you know it, you have a whole nation brainwashed with the same ideology that these intelligence agencies wanted to put out, disinformation, and that's what it's all about. And I've covered this before. If you guys look into document 1035-960 put out by the CIA themselves, they pretty much go into great detail on how to get rid of critical thinkers and to discredit them. The term conspiracy theorist in and of itself was weaponized by the CIA to label anybody who questioned the Warren Commission and their findings when it came to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Within 1035-960, they go into great detail saying that their assets, that's what the CIA calls it in their document, that their assets would infiltrate media companies, CBS, MSNBC, or whatever the case, but they did that so they could get people to sway away from critically thinking people who had genuine concerns about the JFK assassination.
So to go back to the CIA, I think it was completely deliberate that the CIA, which even as early as 1948, that's when the Operation Mockingbird began, when the CIA as an entity realized the importance of the public mind and how important it was to manipulate the public mind and set up a vast program of manipulation. That the very intelligent people, very intelligent but very immoral people working for the CIA, they came to realize that if you have a particularly powerful phrase, that it is, as you've said, like a weapon. And so they ran across this phrase, conspiracy theorist. As I say, it was first used, according to my research, around 1920 by an American author whose name I forget. And they thought, wow, what a tremendous label to pin on anybody who questions the findings of the Warren Commission. And so we do actually have the documentary proof that the CIA sent out these secret communiques to the people they call their assets in the media to begin to use that term, conspiracy theorist, against anybody who was questioning the findings of the Warren Report.
I really want people to really step outside just the political spectrum for a second. The CIA doesn't care if you're left or if you're right, okay? The CIA doesn't care about any of those things. What they care about is discrediting people who question the truth and who get too far down the rabbit hole. They care about the Edward Snowdens, they care about the YURI BEZMENOV'S. He just said that he had to flee from Russia, because his life was in danger, but that's what I'm trying to say. The rabbit hole goes deeper than just it being just the left. The CIA did many brainwashing tactics on innocent American civilians, and the purpose was so they could get more information on how to control the mind. And how to control the mind, if you can control the mind of somebody, you could control a nation. And that's what people aren't really understanding. I don't think they necessarily are interested in your political ideals. Those are really just put there, as we saw in George Carlin's thing, to give you the illusion of freedom, the illusion that you have choice, the illusion that your vote counts. People need to wake up and step outside. When they were conducting those experiments on unwitting American civilians and things of that nature, they didn't give a crap about what political party you aligned with.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal? We do have people who submit pieces to American journals. Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks? This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
We see at one of the church committee hearings that the CIA was being questioned about their involvement in manipulating the media, as well as politicians. These were illegal propaganda tactics to shape and mold a generation to get people to believe whatever the CIA wanted them to believe. The horrific part about all of this, though, was that it dipped into the realm of actual psychological warfare on the American public.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole news and public affairs operation in 1954, ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them.
The CIA has a very dark record, especially when analyzing accounts of horrific documentation of the infamous Operation Paperclip, which recruited Nazi war criminals, specifically Nazi scientists who tortured many during World War II. This operation gave way to unconventional methods of human experimentation that began making its way to America. Who did they test per these experiments? They tested unwitting, innocent American people, the average everyday person, you and me.
I was there for a while and I thought, I don't want to stay here, and I started to run away from the hospital, and they grabbed me and then they put me on sleep treatment. And they kept you asleep for 23 days, and while I was asleep, they were shocking the heck out of me with electric shocks and playing tapes.
As well as the experimental drugs and massive electric shock treatments, Mrs. Huard was subjected to psychic driving. Hypnotic-like messages were repeated over and over to a sleeping patient, sometimes for as long as 16 hours in a row. The electric shock treatments were administered on an unprecedented scale. It was called de-patterning. The mind was short-circuited so the psychic driving hypnotic messages could be planted on a clean slate. They were a key part of the mind control experiment. This is how Mrs. Huard remembers one of the messages.
Why are you running away from your responsibilities?
This is going deeper than the KGB. This is going deeper than the CIA. So all of these pieces of the puzzle, such as Yuri Bezmenov's warning, and the CIA doing what they're doing with their destabilization, outside of JFK's assassination, outside of all these different mediums and things that we, know, one has to ask why. The rabbit hole goes deeper than a lot of people are either too scared to look into, willfully or not choosing to look into, or just trash it all together and say, no, it's stupid. That's what I'm trying to challenge you guys on this channel. Think deeper than your own political ideologies. Think deeper than left versus right. Think deeper than the KGB. Think deeper than the CIA. People are not ready for this kind of truth. So I challenge you guys to think above those things. Don't bash me for what I'm saying. I'm just challenging you. There's nothing wrong with a little challenge if it's going to make you see a different perspective than what you already believe. That's all I have to say for this video. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.